Um, that's a good warm up. I'm going to now introduce Beau Keyte. So Beau is heading up our first set of Thinkinars, which he calls shortstops. So we're actually on shortstop number 5, going for 6 next week. But Beau, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you, Eric. So, as Eric said, my name is Beau Keyte. I have 10-minute mini courses I call shortstops that are basically set up to help you think through getting back to a better place than you are now, hopefully a better place than you were in January. So I have 10 minutes to do it, and we'll start now. With insight number 5, scaling change quickly. And I'd like to start off the webinar by challenging one of our assumptions in terms of our continuous improvement departments. And that is, we need one of our coaches for every project team. We've got to be involved with every team. And I'd like to challenge that because if we think about how we utilize our capacity, this model strains it. Because here's actually what happens. We do tons and tons of good work, and that tons of good work is heard about inside conference rooms and the offices and excites everybody else, and it creates lots of phone calls. And since we can't say no to any phone request, we say yes, and then we create lots and lots of teams. Those lots and lots of teams create wonderful, wonderful improvements, which then create some superheroes out there, that's us, holding up the clarion saying, hey, we have some great stuff going on. Now, what happens then? What actually happens then is we have twofold. We have to continue to roll out this project, which is really, really good, to other areas because it was just a pilot. And the good news about this creates subsequent projects on another path. Each of those projects need rollouts, and then these two things are happening parallel, and all of a sudden we have an exponential demand for your capacity, and you are now the bottleneck. So what I would like to suggest is we need to relieve the bottleneck, and we can do so by thinking about this differently. So let's go to, another country within a foreign language where they allow the students to learn and then teach each other. So this is a new type of thinking and learning, and it's a way to scale change with fixed capacity. That's your capacity is fixed. And in doing so, we need to migrate from spreading best practice to best thinking. Now, it's a straightforward model, but it can be confusing on the graphics. So I'm going to talk a little bit and wave my hands, and I'll show you the graphics. There's basically two sides to this collaborative learning model. One is the cohort. A cohort is a set of teams that all learn together. They come from different areas of the organization, sometimes different companies, and they learn. So that's one side, kind of like a seesaw. And the other side is when they go back to their work group, they teach others what they learned. And then they come back to the cohort and then back to the work group. So it's that cadence of going back and forth that is helpful here. And let me just go through the graphics now. So we start off at the cohort level, and it could be 3 to 6 months. The key here is to be teaching them a tool that is progressive. So you teach them a little bit at a time, and they learn a little bit at a time. So here we are first, getting in a room, and I've had anywhere between 3 and 13 teams in a room learning something. And I'm just using a value stream improvement project as an example. So we'll get them in a room, and we teach them how to scope and have them draw a current state map. But see the word draft there. It's draft because it's just their thinking. And if you remember from last week, we're supposed to be socializing and engaging the rest of the workers. So once they're done in group learning, they take it back home and they use this draft current state map and they socialize it with the rest of the people. And through that, they find a different reality than what they just thought. There's more to the map than that, and they modify the map, and then they bring it back. And the first thing they do when they come back is they share their experiences with the rest of the cohort. So if there are 3 teams there, they share 3 ways. If there's 13 teams there, they share 13 ways. And in doing so, they learn from each other. And this is really key because they're learning how to think critically. And they actually learn more during these sessions of sharing than they do from me teaching them one new thing. So this is the critical way to scale capacity. So they share, then we teach them, in this case, about future state maps. They go back home, they socialize a future state map, they modify it, they get something everyone can agree on, they bring it back, they share again. What did we learn as we socialize our future state maps? What does that do to our critical thinking? How does that help us engage better? Then we teach them how to draft experiments. They go back, do the same thing again. They socialize the experiments, they modify them to make sense to everybody, and then they run them. Now, there's actually more than 3 touch points, but that's all I had room for on the slide. It could be up to 6 or 7 touch points, depending on how you want to create the cadence and chunk out the learning. So that's the model. And I wanted to run you through an example of one with lawyers. I had a client who asked me to work in the legal department of an insurance company where the lawyers litigate claims. And they didn't have enough capacity for the claims volume. So they took these complex cases and outsourced them to private firms who charged them a bunch of money. There were 12 field offices, and we decided to have 3 offices at a time represent one cohort, and we would do them sequentially. So we just started off with 3. Now, they had some goals. They wanted to increase the throughput by 20%. They wanted to increase the in-house retention, that's of the claims, to 70%. So they'll want to keep 70% of the claims in-house. They'll want to improve customer satisfaction and employee engagement and find a way to do this better and quicker. Now, they've been at this for about 3 years now. But after the first 15 months, here are the numbers I can share with you. The red bar was their baseline. The blue bar is what their goal was, the throughput improvement of 20%. And in 15 months, they had improved by 29%. In terms of in-house retention, they actually brought more cases in-house to the tune of $2 million a year per field office. So in addition to that, there were other points in terms of customer satisfaction improvement and employee engagement improvement. They did very well on both of those too. I'm just not sharing that with you because of the time we have. So that is an example. They use that model. They use the cadence and the seesaw back and forth with that model. So if you think about that, say, well, how did we fix our capacity? That's what this is all about. I was there only for the first cohort. I had 2 internal people from the client learn from me. They supported all 4 cohorts. And what was cool about that is even during the first cohort, the field offices were saying, hey, we know who's coming up next. Let's reach out to them and tell them what we're learning and how we're starting to think differently. And so they actually helped mentor each of the cohorts one at a time. And by the 4th cohort, they had enough confidence in the first 3 to do some of the training themselves for the 4th cohort, while the CI staff sat in the back. And after this project was done, they started their own without any CI help at all because they've learned the critical thinking to make improvements, and they haven't stopped 3 years later. So the cool thing here is they found out how to scale the capacity. We had conference calls. They have a repository where they document their experiments. They have buddy offices. So when they get stuck, they don't call corporate. They call another field office and talk it through. And then they work with managers in terms of how they manage differently. And they also have regional meetings. So that's an example of a cadence where people can learn faster and you can scale quickly without adding your capacity because you use your associates' energy and capabilities and your role changes. You need to teach, facilitating, coach, which is a way better way of coaching or consulting for me and you leverage your capacity as a result. And I'd like to truly end this insight by sharing with you a comment from Jeff Hasty. Jeff Hasty is a friend of Cal Poly and Central Coast Lean, and he is a one-man show. Was a one-man show. He retired in January from Beau's Corporation, and he was the only person employed to do continuous improvement. And they did a great job around the world. He helped people around the world because whenever the phone rang and he got a request, the first thing out of his mouth was, "Who am I training to do what I do?" And I invite you to use that line with someone else. That's the end of my 10 minutes. And you do have an assignment. It's not possible to run a cohort between now and Friday, but I think you can plan one. I think you can challenge yourselves to say, what would this look like? So pick a project, any project, and think about how you would break the training into progressive segments so you can have that cadence between cohort and team level. Then create the choreography. How is this actually going to work? Find some test subjects and talk up your new thinking. And that you can do by Friday. So I hope to hear that on Friday. Please bring any questions you have. I've done several of these. There are no bad questions and hopefully no bad answers. And after that, we'll go up to Monday, which is the last insight, number 6, integrating conscious behavior changes. And for Monday, let's put on our best. Back to you, Eric.
All right, Beau, thank you very much. Interesting ideas on scaling capacity. So hopefully you guys got some good ideas out of that of your own. So